Good evening. Given all the issues we've been talking about tonight, I think it's very appropriate that we talk about my mother tonight. I mean, it may seem that this is a family affair we got going on here, but you know, my family produced great ladies. We have a matriarchal society in my family. My great-grandmother, old mama, was the head of the family. My grandmother was the head in her generation, and now people think my daddy is the head of his generation, but he's not. My Aunt Barbara is the head of the generation, and I'm the oldest son, but Glenys is the matriarchal leader of our family. So it's appropriate, I think, that we talk about Beryl Hanna Glenys. She, I don't know what I can say. She was a great lady. I would name her a mother of the Bahamian nation. She's one of those people who helped to create the Bahama land. She's one of those who did the cookouts. Yeah. And potentially could have been a leader or a minister of government or even a prime minister if she had decided to take the road, but she didn't. And she's that old generation of women political leadership that we grew up with.
Just isn't that point though. You know, like I've been thinking about this. You wrote a beautiful thing about Mommy at the funeral, and you could probably pull some of the stuff out of that. But one of the observations I had with my mother, Mommy, after she died, was you see in a snapshot, you begin to understand how smart she was, how strong she was, because you sort of immersed in it, so you don't really appreciate it like that.
That's true.
But in hindsight, you look at it and you see that she had all these things. What she did, how she held that law office without the formal, never going through the formal training. She articled and all that. And then at the same time, she had a husband who, as we all know, very strong, got strong views, old school in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. Tell me about it. But she was able, and this is what I find interesting, and this may be a lesson to a lot of women, as strong as she was, as smart as she was, as much as she brought to the table, she was able to partner with him in such a way that there was no conflict in terms of that strength, that mutual strength that they brought to it. And they were able to do what they had to do, raise their children, build a business, and work a constituency and make advances in that way without any sort of underlying insecurities about who was what. You know, and that to me, that was an important lesson about how it can be done, how secure people can come together, male and female, and you know, pull off. You know, now we're all a bit strange now in our family, and you might have noticed that. I don't know.
Well, talk for yourself. I'm a normal, natural fella, man. The rest of the world crazy. No, but yeah, but you know, she had a handful.
She had a handful.
I mean, every one of us had a hard mouth.
Yeah, it's true.
And we contended with each other throughout the time. We were, you know, I mean, that's probably why we all became advocates. Most of us became advocates. But at the end of the day, in terms of Mommy's role inside the PLP as one of the prime movers for women's rights, for the right for women to vote, for majority rule, for independence. Even she was one of the proponents for republic. But coming from England, what was it in her background, you think, that made her so amenable to such revolutionary positions that she took in life?
Boy.
Support the Vietnam War. I mean, against the Vietnam War. When the news come on, they say Viet Cong guerrillas. She say, how they could call them guerrillas? They freedom fighters. You know, where did she get this mindset?
But you could answer that. One thing I'll say is that she didn't come from a wealthy background, so she never was privileged. That's the first thing. Secondly, the thing you wrote about, or you talk about the fact that she endured the bombings of a fascist regime in England, out of Germany. And I never thought about that before, because that had to figure in your consciousness, because you were on the receiving end of this sort of aggression, and you know. And thirdly, I think because she was just a very genuine, good human being who had an absolute fundamental love for people, and that is why anyone who knew her saw it. And so there was an empathy for people in need. There was an empathy for people who were suffering. There was a real belief in the effort for equality and for justice. And that is why she didn't believe in the death penalty, but her father was murdered. So people say it happened to you, it happened to you, it happened to her. But she didn't believe in the death penalty because she saw it differently.
That's right.
So, you know, but you could probably answer it better than me. I mean, what you think?
No. I think you're the most eloquent one on the show.
You
and, you know, she was, I only caused problems. I was a troubled black sheep in the family. But, you know, I think she was very proud of you.
All of our children.
I think that, you know, I think a lot of, when I see you get up in the floor of the House of Assembly, a lot of what I see is my daddy, but a whole lot of it is my mommy coming out of your mouth. You know, especially the refusing to sit down. That wasn't your daddy, that was your mommy.
But you know, it's interesting you say that, you know, because I always thought that my father was the major, and he might still be the major influence. But it's when she died, and the thing you wrote too helped me to understand the way she was, and the, you know, the sort of intolerance of corruption. That is like that too.
Yeah.
But I didn't remember that she was also, and that's one of the things. I think it's because I've come from that sort of orientation, that when you're in the political process and you see the jokers and the gigolos, no offense to anybody, and you know that people come forward.
How they could take offense? They know who they are. You want me to call names?
And I'm talking, no, don't call names.
I call the names if you want to, though.
And I'm talking across the board, and I ain't talking nowhere specific. But when you see them, they come forward, and you know they enjoy looking in the mirror more than anything else, and they see political process as an opportunity to advance personal interests. I can't stand it. It's the one time I become very unpleasant. So, so you know, I think that's something that in all of us, that they both parents would have implanted in us, that sense of, look at the show you're doing here now, you know.
You know, she was the one
off the beaten path show.
But you know, she is the one who put my hands into Africa. You know, I mean, you know, many people would assume that my African beliefs came from my daddy, but really it's my mother. She was the one who talked to me about Mandela. She was the one who talked to me about the Congo and Kwame and Nkrumah, and she put the books in my hand. So, I mean, she was very, and this is a paradox. A white middle-class mother, married to a black man, there's all these stereotypes about these mixed interracial marriages. But she was more African than your father. I mean, and in terms of reading, I have never come across anybody in my life, Glenys. I mean, she read four books at a time.
Prolific.
And she made sure that you read. And when your daughter came along, she put books in your daughter's hand to the point that your daughter was reading Animal Farm as a toddler.
Yeah.
You know, but your mommy was a great mommy. And
I'm studying English literature. But you know, when we did tributes in Parliament, one of the things I pointed out, one of the first books mommy gave me was a biography of Emmeline Pankhurst, who was a suffragette in England.
Yeah.
One of the first ones. Yeah. And so she immediately planted into my mind. I didn't know she was, it couldn't have been a random book, you know, but this sense of bringing a sort of equal justice to the social spectrum, you know. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that Daddy, as old school as he is in many respects, he absolutely gave her realm, and she was able to operate in that. And
he grew up in a matriarchal society.
He did too, yeah.
I mean, that's the key to that, you know. I think he came up in a society where women had leadership positions. And I don't think he's ever been intimidated by strong women. No. And your mommy was a strong woman.
Very strong person, very strong.
Yeah. But now, coming back to, in terms of her early life in the PLP, they didn't have a whole lot of money.
No.
When they started out, I remember my daddy had a Hillman. And when we used to go over Hawkins Hill or East Street Hill, me and Mom used to have to get up and push it over the hill. But she stuck with it. And she didn't have pretensions of being a lady or a dame or some elite person. She was more comfortable with ordinary, everyday people. And I think that defines her more than anything else. She's just down to earth.
Yeah.
She didn't have pretensions about who she was, and more than anything, she loved the children. And a husband.
Yeah,
I think she loved him more than the children.
I think more.
Yeah, well, she loved that fella. You know, he was a Romeo in his young days.
Well,
you know.
I get that part, no.
Well, she was a young girl. He rated a young girl. He wasn't so old himself, but she was quite young.
Yeah, she was very young, yeah.